They like to show off in front of folks, but when they go home, their life is a mess. And whether you believe it or not, the enemy is always lurking about, seeking whom he may devour. As a spirit-filled believer, you must make a determination in your mind to survive at all costs. I've said to you several times that you've got to have some survival spirits. When I was young, I, like most youngsters, liked to look at comic books, and I enjoyed reading Batman and Superman and Spider-Man. But they had a common theme in those books. Even though the character may have gotten injured, even though Batman or Spider-Man or Superman may have gotten hurt, may have gotten injured, they always bounced back and they came out on top. I believe that's a message for the church, that God wants you, regardless to your injury, and regardless to you being disappointed by other folks, and regardless to you being hurt, God wants you to bounce back. Because when you bounce back, he's going to bring you back on top. And when you come back, just don't come back and say, I'm back. But when you come back with victory. Come back saying, not only am I back, but I'm back victorious. I'm back with more strength. I'm back with more enthusiasm. I'm rolling up my sleeves now as never before, because God has been good to me. Now, victory is expensive. Victory is very costly, but victory is also very rewarding. You can only acquire victory if you're willing to fight for it. Joshua, the successor of Moses, was a fighter. He was a warrior. He was one that stood tall in the face of danger. He stood by the side of Moses, learning from him, gleaning from him. He stood there next to Moses. As Moses taught, he also would receive from the man of God. That's a good thing for us to always keep in mind, that everybody needs somebody who they can look to pour into their life. Elisha had to have an Elijah. Ruth and Naomi had to be paired up together. Joshua had to have Moses. And everybody needs somebody who have already been where you're going. Everybody needs somebody who's got just a little more experience than you have, that can speak into your life, that can pour into your life and help you avoid some pitfalls. Joshua was right there with Moses. He developed under his tutelage, and he became a mighty man of God because he was willing to listen to somebody that had more depth than he had. A whole lot of folks now are not making it like they should because they're listening to the wrong voices. They're listening to folks who are criticizers, listening to the complainers and listening to the grumblers. But if you want to make it, you've got to listen to the right voice. Jesus said that my sheep know my voice, and a stranger they will not follow. And too many people are listening to the devil's voice and ought to be listening to the voice of the Lord, because God's voice will never let you down. He walked with Moses. He saw how Moses dealt with people. He saw how Moses dealt with situations. He was not too quick to move and make hasty decisions, nor was he foolish and naive and let people walk over him. We got to be careful when we take on sainthood, because when you take on sainthood, then the devil makes it appear as though you're not supposed to let people just, you let them do whatever they want to do. But just because you are a saint doesn't mean you're a doormat. You got to be careful that you don't become too passive. You got to be careful that you don't become too spiritual and let the devil do whatever he wants to do. You got to stand up and let the devil know, not in this house, not in my life, not in my marriage. You got to let the devil know that you better hold your place, and you can't come up in here. Matter of fact, this is holy ground. My house is holy ground. My lifestyle is holy ground. Everything I'm involved with is holy ground. And when the devil invades holy ground, he's on the wrong territory. The preacher even last week said you got to get the thief out of your life. And the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He wants to kill all of your joy. He wants to destroy your testimony and destroy your credibility. He comes to, my God, destroy everything that you've worked for and kill your influence and steal away, my God, the joy of the Lord that is your strength. But you've got to let the devil know that God did not bring me this far for me to turn around now. God did not bring me to this place for me to get discouraged in the church. If I wanted to be discouraged, I could stay out there, but I didn't come in here to be discouraged. I didn't come in here to hold my head down. I'm going to lift up my head. King of glory shall come in. You got to watch that enemy, because that enemy is very sneaky. The devil that have sowed discord and dogged you out and talked about you all week, he'll show up next to you on a Sunday morning service. You got to watch that devil, because he throws a rock and hides his hand. Joshua reminds Israel that the Lord had given them rest from all his enemies. God had to remind them through Joshua, you have come through all of these fights. Every nation, look like under the face of the earth, have fought you. Israel, every time you go into new territory, you get fought. Israel, every time you go to a new place in God, somebody's fighting against you. Every time you launch out into the deep and get a little stronger in God, you got another fight. I think that's an underlying message for you and I, that every time God gets us closer to where he wants us to be, you got a fight on your hand. Every time the church gets higher and the Spirit of God moves even greater, you got somebody or something or some situation that's going to come up that'll try to bring you back down. But just like God fought every battle for Israel, he's fighting every battle for you. It's no need for you to hold your head down, but look to the hills from which cometh your help, because all of your help comes from God, and God knows how to help you. He's a succorer, he's a helper, he's the one that gives you strength in the midnight hour. You don't have to ever worry about, am I going to win? God can't lose. Losing is not even in his vocabulary. When he put losing in the dictionary, he put it for the devil. He didn't put it for the saints, because the saints are more than conquerors. Israel was used to fighting. They were familiar with having enemies. The reason they were familiar with having enemies is because they were so blessed. Look at your neighbor and just tell your neighbor, you've been wondering why you've had so much trouble. But the reason you have so much trouble is because you are so blessed. I wish you just tell about 3 or 4 people around you and tell them, I'm just so blessed.